Good morning, coders. Let's get this bread. We're gonna work on making multiple power-ups in the B game today. And I was just remembering that the B movie has like a really popular meme, so maybe we could make the B game have its own meme too. That would be epic. All right, but we want to make it so multiple honeys. So remember last episode, which dropped earlier today, as soon as you get 10, oh gosh, we had the glitch again, first thing. We're going to have to fix that. I think this we get to 10, and then all of a sudden we're powered up for 5 seconds, and then it slows down. So great, but we want to make it so you can get multiple honeys. Maybe every 50 points you can get a new honey. And we want to do that in here somewhere. So how are we going to make this happen? This is going to be fun. So first things first, I'm going to put all of the honey management into its own function, honey management, just so, remember to clean up our code and it's not in gameplay is getting a little unwieldy, so we're going to put it into its own function, and then we'll just call the function right here, honey management. All right, so it's separated into its own function now. Code's a little cleaner. All I have to worry about is the code in this function. So what do I want to happen? So we already have a variable called numHoney, which is pretty useful. So I'm going to go ahead and add that to a watcher so we can keep track of it as we're playing through the game and see what's happening. And the problem is this, I'm spinning my mouse around in circles because this honey management is going to keep continually being called. So remember when we had numHoney equals numHoney plus 1, it continually added 1 when score was 10. And we have to figure out what are our max number of honeys. So I think number of honey, I think 3 power-ups. I think we only made 3 honey sprites. Yeah, we have 3 honey sprites, honey 1, honey 2, and honey 3. So we have to figure out which honey we want to make visible. And the first one's easy. So if score is equal to 50, then we set numHoney equal to 1. But we want to make this work for multiple sprites. So first things first is we're going to introduce this function called modulo. And it's not in the math. It's not in the math thing at all, but modulo, you can search it up. Modulo is, thankfully this is JavaScript, so we can still use it. Modulo is it's basically the remainder of division. So what I want to do is score divided by 50. If the remainder is equal to 0, then I want to add 1 to number of honey. And this will make it so that we can get up to 1, 2, or like, I don't want to have to make 1,000 if statements for every 50 points. We want to be able to keep playing the game, and every time we get 50 points, it adds 1 to our honey. And I'm just going to use 10 for now for testing. So let's see what happens. So I press enter. Okay, so 0 divided by 10 technically, I guess, has a remainder of 0. So let's just let's start our score at 1 instead of 0. That should fix that bug. Okay, great. So now when we get to 10, again, it adds, well, that time it added 2 because it ran through the loop twice. But then you see when we get to 20, it added 2 more. Be watching down here. When we hit 30, okay, so we have 1,000,000 honeys now. So we want to max out at 3. And how are we going to do that? So we need some way so it only runs through this. Okay, so we can so let's do and honey1 dot visible is false. So not honey1 visible. So now if score modulo 10 equals 0 and we don't have a honey, let's add 1. So let's see if that does anything for us. We get to 10, numHoney is at 1. we get to 20. Num honey's still at 1. I hit enter. We get our 5 boost. Oh, and then I hit another 10 points, and num honey went back up to 1. And I hit my boost again, and I get to a divisor of 60. Perfect. Okay, so this is kind of working great for 1 honey. Now the question is, how do we make it work for 3 honeys? So, man, this algorithm is kind of stumping me off the top of my head. I'm just gonna keep trying things, and this might be a slightly longer episode, so we can figure this out. But let's go ahead and run with it. So, if honey 1 is not visible, so actually, I want this code to run every time we hit the divisor. So I'm going to leave it like this. And then the question is, if honey is equal to 1, 2, or 3, we want honey 1, honey 2, or honey 3 to be visible. So we can only have 3 honeys max. So only if all 3 honeys are not visible do I want to add 1 to num honey. So if not honey 1 dot visible, so if honey 1 isn't visible, and not honey 2 dot visible, and not honey 3 dot visible, then I add 1 to the number of honeys, right? So if all 3 of our honey sprites are invisible, then I'm good to add another honey to my screen. And now, what's going to happen? We only have 3 honeys, so if honey 1, so if num honey equals 1, then I need to make honey 1 visible. Else if num honey is equal to 2, then I make honey 1 and honey 2 visible. Honey 1 visible. Honey 2 dot visible. And then else if num honey is equal to 3, then I'll make all 3 visible. Honey 1 dot visible equals true. Honey 2, honey 3. Honey 2 dot visible equals true. Honey 3 dot visible equals true. All right, so if they're all invisible, I add 1 to the honey. And then if it's num honey equals 1, I set honey dot visible to true. If num honey is 2, I set both honeys visible to true. 1 should already be visible from before, actually, so we can just do this. This should be fine. We'll see if that leads to any glitches. Else, we do nothing. If we get to 4 honeys, great. It's still going to add 1. It's going to make it 4. Well, let's see if this works for 3 honeys, and then we'll figure out that bug. So, coding's hard. That's the moral of the story. I got to 20, and didn't work. Why? Because this logic says they all have to be invisible. That's not true. Oh, gosh. So, Control Z, undo. So let's drop this whole if statement. Let's try if num honey less than 3. But this is still gonna add 1 multiple times. Okay, I think I have an idea. So let's do it the most straightforward way. So if number of honeys is equal to 0, this is a student told me to just hard code the numbers instead of adding 1 every time, and I think they might be right. So if our score is divisible by 10 and then we're going to have another if statement embedded inside. If num honeys is 0, so if we have 0 honeys, then we set num honey equal to 1, and we set honey1.visible. I already have this if statement right here. Let's do this. Let's do it this way. So, if num honey equals 0, then, I think this is going to work. Then we set num honey equal to 1, and we set honey1.visible to be true. Else if num honey is already equal to 1, and we want to add another one, then we create num honey equals 2, and we set honey2 to be visible. And then finally, if numbers of honeys is equal to 2, then we set num honey up to 3, and we say honey3.visible equals true. So there we go. And this, we can keep expanding this if statement if you want to add more power-ups later on, but that should give us 3 honeys. Now we just have to say if we're using the honey. So if keyed on space and num honey is greater than 0, we subtract 1 from the honey. And we need another if statement here depending on, so which honey, so now number of honey is just going to be equal to what, 0, 1, 2, or 3. So we have 4 possible options for number of honey. So if we're going to put another if statement in here. So we're going to check all 4 of those options. So if we want to use a power up, then we have to have greater than 0 honey. That's good. And we press space. But now if numbers of honey is equal to 3, then we have to set the number of honey down to 2 and make sure we get honey3.visible equals false. Else if we're going from 3 to 2, then we need to set num honey equal to 1 and make sure we set honey2.visible to false. So we get rid of our indicator that we have a second honey here. Else if num honey is equal to 1, then we're gonna set down to 0 and make sure we set honey1's visibility down to false. Okay, I can get rid of one of these and both of these. If, else if, else if. Okay. The final thing, well, there's going to be a bug when I run this. So, let's see. We get up to 10, first honey, second honey. Whoa, we got 3 honeys there. Nice. But now I hit space, and I just used all the honeys at the same time. Awesome. I gotta watch that again. So I get up to 10, and when I hit 10, it added all 3 honeys. So if score modulo 10 is, okay, so it's still, so it was 0, and then it went to 1, and then it went through the if statement again. It was 1 to 2. Ugh. Okay, so, okay, here we go. Let's try this. So we're going to make another variable called old score, and we'll set it equal to 1 also. All right. So now, so now if we have this, then, so this is like, we want to check if it's, we only want to go through this if statement one time per, like when score is equal to 10, we only want to go through this loop one time. So we need some way to keep track of when score was 10, have I been through this loop before? Yes or no? So we're going to set old score equal to score. And now I want to put an and statement in here. So and score is not equal to old score. Okay. Logic. It works, but it hurts your head. All right, so let's see. So now I get up to 10. Awesome. Up to 20. Awesome. Second honeypot. Up to 30. Awesome. Okay, now let's see. Let's make sure it doesn't break when I hit 40. Look, num honey, still 3. Great. Now I hit space. And awesome. Space. Space, space, space. Okay, so the last thing is we can spam these power-ups. I don't think we want to be able to do that. So the final thing we're going to have to do is, remember we already have a variable called power-up on. So, and not power-up on. Not power-up on means the power-up is off. So now you can only subtract 1 from the honey if you don't have a power-up on. I think with this old score equals score code, we might actually be able to switch back to addition, but it's working for 3 honeys, so we might as well leave it now like that. So let's see. So let's do some play testing. 10. I can press space right now. Works for 5 seconds. I can get a second honey power up. I can spam space, and it doesn't continually subtract. All right. So 10 is probably a little too much, so we're gonna just go back to making modulo of 50. So every 50 points you get a new honey. The cool thing about this is if we would have hard-coded when score equals 50, we go up to 1 honey. When score equals 100, we go up to 2 honeys. We don't know if the users used the honey yet or not. So hopefully, the cool thing about this is you can keep going to 1,000,000 points, and you'll still have access to more honeys. So, okay, that was a long episode, really complicated logic problem, but we got it working. So we'll do some cleanup next time, and I think we'll make it when you have the honey, you're invincible, so you don't actually hit the humans. I think that would be cool. Maybe we can change the animation of the bee while the honey's activated. But that'll be it for this episode, and I'll see you next time, coders.